Love and peace. So we're going to first talk about Amenhotep's chamber room, where it was saying that the Rosicrucians did their initiation. I found further details of their initiation. They then went to the outside of the Sphinx, where they was under the stars and all of that. But again, they did not go to Egypt till 1928. I showed the Professor Drew article when he was in Newark, which was all the way up till 1923. And within that clipping, it says, for all those who desire to know more about Jesus. So that already shows he had that information before unto thee I grant, or the Rosicrucians. And the prophet definitely said, use these newspapers to shovel yourself out from underneath the avalanches of lies. The prophet was using, he was so smart, just like with Levi Dowling, like I said, the Asiatic mystics that was advertising in the back of the Aquarian Gospel magazine. They didn't just do that trying to advertise. They was putting their stamp on anything that they was trying to claim. The Moors are very, very intelligent. And what was the last sentence that the Professor Drew, Egyptian Adept student, put in the clipping? If you desire to know more about Jesus, he was letting it be known using the newspapers. I'm going to stop the European from thinking. If two or more go off and do something, they're going to tear it up. And what happens when you tear something up? You leave fragments of it. And those two or more was Nicholas Notovich, the Rosicrucians, and Levi Dowling. They all had fragments. But I want to retract something I said about the Nicholas Notovich German book. As I said, I did a demonstration on the Cornish Temple, and I did some of the readings, and they are divine, but they're different parts, like focusing on Mary and Joseph, and it's very beautiful. However, they're fragments. That's what I meant by watered down. I want to get into Levi Dowling real quick. His father was a preacher. He was a preacher. So what about the beginning of Christianity? They don't have that part in none of them except for Noble Drew Ali. And they all was searching for the lost years of Jesus. So Levi Dowling would have never put in the beginning of Christianity if he had it, because it says what the 10 Commandments are used for. And it says that it's used for the rich to rule over the poor. He would have never put that in there. He was trying to push the Eurocentric Christianity with the pale-skinned Jesus still. So even if he had it, he wouldn't have put it in there. But I don't think he had that. But what I meant by watered down is they only had the fragments. Drew Ali brought the most important part, the holy instructions from the prophet. From the prophet, because he was the ray of light that Allah gave the ray to give to the people. He's the ray through the Ra of Amen. So I want to return and talk about the initiations and all that. They left breadcrumbs, but they was generic ones. Like I said, some of the things they didn't get to do. When Drew Ali went there, these was 3,000 years old. So he went through these initiations. Amenhotep room to the Sphinx and all of that. But Drew Ali did indeed put facts down of who brought the lost years of Jesus first. There was at least 1923 with Drew Ali. Rosicrucians didn't bring it till 1925 published. Drew Ali did in fact have a High German book. And that book of Lost Jesus from Nicholas Notovich was probably what he used just to expose if he was challenged about the Dowling. He used that to show that you all are getting your stuff from Tibet, because Dowling wasn't even wanting to admit it came from Tibet. He was acting like he was a mystic, looking into the Akashic records, seeing ribbons in the sky like Stevie Wonder. No, they came from Tibet. But Drew Ali, I felt, was being quite humorous about it if he was challenged. Because what did he say? Can somebody translate this High German book for me? That's kind of like a smart-ass way of saying to Dowling, you translated this German lost years. And mine comes from the straight source from Egypt, because I'm the Egyptian Adept. I have the holy instructions and I have all the other portions. Y'all have fragments, and you ain't even bringing the small ones about the beginning of Christianity. I want to speak about the initiation, or the tour that it said they went on. They called it a tour, but by 1928, just like when you go to Mecca, Jerusalem, there's hotels surrounding all around there. They're tourism. They're making finance off of tourism. And as soon as you get off there, they run up to the Europeans, and I can take you to the secret cave, and they're trying to make finance off of their own stuff. But today, the ones that they call natives in Egypt ain't even the true descendants. It makes me think of the movie Slumdog Millionaire. The children running around trying to survive. People are taking their shoes off to go in the temple to pray, and they was stealing their shoes and taking them and selling them. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what it was like when the Rosicrucians went in 1928. Within some of the testimonies of Rosicrucians while they was there, they was not allowed into certain initiations or certain rooms, but that's because they was pale-skinned Europeans. Drew Ali go around there, especially with the turban or fez, they ain't going to be running up to him acting like that because he's not pale-skinned European. He's going to have more access, more things, especially when he started demonstrating. So when they was standing outside of the Sphinx, that makes it very plausible for Noble Drew Ali was in Egypt. If they was doing any kind of initiation outside of the Sphinx, there could have been said about a story of a prophecy of if someone can go in and come out through the legs, then they are seen as a divine prophet. And Drew Ali could have stood up and said, I can do that. They went to the Amenhotep chamber, who brought back the one creator. We're going to go over the rays as well. Again, Amen Ra, Amenhotep, through his holy prophet Drew Ali, Amen. The Rosicrucians advertised it plainly. Pilgrimage to Egypt, announced in their own magazines and brochures, scheduled to visit Karnak, Luxor, to gather at the Sphinx, and to enact ceremonies patterned on ancient forms. It was printed in the Mystic Triangle, the Rosicrucian in-house magazine edited H. Spencer Lewis. So Temple of Karnak, the ritual would be patterned on ancient forms and is to be part of an initiation ceremony, announcements in 1928. And then 1929 make it plain that this was intended, in their words, to be a return to the mystic past, a pilgrimage. Their own later retrospectives describing traveling from the Sphinx along the pyramids, across desert camps, and into the temple precincts at Luxor, where a Luxor initiation was staged. Photographs and descriptive copy of Rosicrucian periodicals show tents, desert nights, native musicians, they leaving breadcrumbs of what you could really do back in the day. So let me see if I can find some excerpts. The Mystic Triangle, 1929. After leaving Cairo, the Rosicrucian touring party proceeded into Upper Egypt by train up the Nile Valley, arriving at Luxor for the apex initiation of their journey to the mystic land. We began our preparations on the morning of February 13th, but remember, they left January 8th, 9th, and 10th. So they've been there for a while. We began our preparations for the greatest event of our entire journey, the concluding initiation ceremony in Luxor. They go on to say that what they planned was to use Amenhotep's old temple in the ruins of the ancient Luxor Temple, but they also admit the Egyptian authorities would not easily grant a permit. We were informed by the local representatives of the government that the Rosicrucians in Egypt were forbidden to hold any ceremonies of any kind within the ruins of a temple, except by special permit. Because of restrictions, no lights, incense, or fire allowed after dark in any of the rooms. So why can't you have light in those rooms after dark? I can only imagine what you would see with light in those rooms after dark. Their plan to do an evening initiation had to be changed. So again, this is just a reflection of the initiations that happened there. Drew Ali, his situation was totally different. They wasn't bucking on him. Again, like I said, he was of the bloodline. I know he proved his demonstrations and everything, and I know that he was in full effect. The Rosicrucian Digest group photo of Sphinx ritual. Immediately after, these members journeyed westward into the great desert space to spend a night under the starlit heavens, while mystic ceremonies were conducted at midnight, accompanied by music given by native musicians. Now, Akhenaten, Amenhotep, is connected to a sphinx, the initiation symbolism. I don't know if this slab is the ancient original or if it's a modern reproduction, but a Mama period scene showing Akhenaten in the form of a sphinx receiving rays from Aten. Beside and under the disc is the classic Amama formula, the living Aten, the great one who gives life. The phrase used in nearly all Amama reliefs. Cartouches, oval name rings. The top row contains paired cartouches, one set for Aten, one set for Akhenaten. This is exactly how Amama royal inscriptions were formatted. Of Aten, Ra, horse of the two horizons, who rejoices in the horizon, and his name as Hushu is the Aten. Who you think you is? Beautiful are the manifestations of Ra, the unique one of Ra. The Sphinx shown here is Akhenaten, the great ruler of the two lands, the son of Ra, beloved of Aten, living forever and ever, the great ruler of the two lands. That can be in spiritual form, as above, so below, or that could be in this realm as east and west, body inscription, the king living in truth, lord of the two lands. Two lands. Akhenaten, great in his duration, blessed by Aten's rays, and those rays are the prophets. Full readable script. The relief shows Akhenaten as the Sphinx receiving the life-giving rays of Aten, the sun disk. The cartouches across the top identify the two power presence. First, the name Aten, the living Aten, Ra horse, who rejoices in the horizon, in his name, as Shuhu is the Aten. So Drew Ali was a prophetic ray at the Sphinx. Next comes the double name of the king, and Akhenaten meaning he who is effective for Aten. The central inscription praises him as the son of Ra, beloved of Aten, living forever. In regards to the Moorish Quran, the sun is not to be worshipped, but it is one of the greatest creatures and creations of Allah, because it extends to us that light that gives life. Indeed. Very brief conclusion on this one. The Luxor initiation, going within the temple of Amenhotep, the Rosicrucians said that they wasn't allowed to do that unless they had a permit. And you know, if they could have paid for it, they would have. But there wasn't no permit. Law.